Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films back again with Vinland Saga. Last time around we had Servant, where basically Askeladd was going against the boys, and then Thorkel arrived, and then the boys were swiftly dispatched. The boys did not stand a chance, and most of them are dead, or like Torgrim, who's now brain dead. So, yeah. But Thorkel was going to spare Askeladd because he's going to get Canute, but then Thorfinn came in like a bat out of hell and challenged Thorkel to a duel for the sake of Askeladd. Not because he wants to protect Askeladd, but because he wants to kill Askeladd himself. And Thorkel, well, take a guess. Thorkel is just happy to be there, and so he accepted the duel. So here we are. Like always, the reaction is down in the description and in the pinned comment for your viewing pleasure. So let's go ahead and jump right into this episode of Vinland Saga. Here we go. Well, I feel like we've gone from the question of what does it mean to be a man to what does it mean to be man? Mankind. To examine the problems with mankind, you must first divide the word into its root words, mank and eind. What do these two words mean? We don't know. Thus, mankind will always be a mystery. I didn't make that up. That's from something else I did, but I don't know. Oh my god. It's too early in the morning, man. I can't... How am I supposed to be deep this early in the morning? I mean, Canute somehow got what Thor's was always trying to tell Thorfinn, you know? You have no enemies. You have no enemies. What is meaning to battle, you know? And, you know, for a second, I was kind of thinking, he's turning into Eren Yeager for a second, I felt like. But, no, we've gone down the better path. We got what Eren Yeager might needed to have been. I don't need to go into that, so... You know what it is? It reminds me, actually, of Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm going to talk positively about Jujutsu Kaisen, just not on an episode of Jujutsu Kaisen. So, which I've enjoyed the show enough, but I thought it's been good, you know. But one of the more interesting things that I feel like gets overshadowed in Jujutsu Kaisen is Fushiguro, and I really like his philosophy of, you know, he does not save people equally, you know? Like, when he saves people from cursed spirits, he determines in his head, you know, does he really need to say, like, you know, if there's a cursed spirit that's going to kill a serial killer, in his head he's thinking, do I even need to save this guy, you know? Or something like that, and that's a very extreme example, but... I don't know, like, it kind of reminds me of that just with the whole, like, it's not love, it's discrimination thing, you know? Which is an interesting concept, you know? I can't believe Viking show is getting deep. Like, that's crazy, but... But yeah, it's not love, it's discrimination. That's a very interesting idea, you know? That love is nature. It's, I mean, if anything, it's chaos, you know? Like, where man tries to bring order, the universe is chaos, you know? I don't know. It's like there's a lot to process in this one, you know? Like... There's a lot to process because what Canute learns about love and discrimination and nature and man is interesting because then he gets to the end, you know, he gets to the end and he almost forsakes God, basically. Like, man cannot find salvation through these trials, This is something that's like, I feel like I would need to rewatch this episode to really get this all down. So I apologize if by the end of this video I don't have everything fully down, because this was a lot to take in, Like, I came here this morning for a cool rematch between Thorfinn and Thorkel, and what I got was philosophy with Canute, But even in a sense, you could say that Thorfinn and Thorkel were also kind of doing that, because, they talk about the true warrior, and what is missing, because Thorkel recognizes that, it's like, well, Thorfinn, you have great strength, you're very cunning, but your swordsmanship is lacking, he's missing something. He's lacking what it means to be a true warrior. And Thorkel admits that he has the same problem, because Thorfinn says, well, if I have something missing, or if my swordsmanship is average, why are you getting hurt so bad? Why are you having so much trouble? And he fully admits, like, yes, I'm missing something too. And he asks, do you know what that missing thing is? Thorfinn doesn't know, and he didn't expect him to know, So it's just, so that's a very, very interesting thing, Like, they are both missing something, and that's going off of the philosophy of Thor's, who even Thor's admitted he was not a true warrior, Because for him, a true warrior does not need a weapon, Does not need a sword. That's what he said towards the beginning of the show. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's like the baseline of a true warrior does not need a weapon, Even he admitted that he could not reach that outcome, He still needed a sword when he faced Askeladd, Whereas he could beat up all of Askeladd's men, even Bjorn, who was using the Berserker Shroom, even he still had to use a sword against Askeladd, and Askeladd used a sword against him, and ultimately killed him, not with his own skill, but with his own archers, So it's an interesting thing of, what makes a true warrior. Even Thor's, as much as he's, propped up by Thorfinn and Thorkel, even he could not achieve this, So that's a very interesting thing, and I feel like that has to tie together with everything that Canute went through, and that'd be an interesting thing if Canute almost is the one who kind of gets it, Now, granted, he's not going into a fight, But did he? But then again, I think he did, though. Because Bjorn comes over, high off his ass on Berserker Shroom, and without a weapon, Canute does disable him, basically, He disables him. He shuts him down, basically. And he doesn't use a weapon. He uses his own hands, and it did work. It did work. So has Canute become the true warrior? Who's expecting that? Did Canute become the true warrior that Thor's talked about? I don't know. And now he's gonna go. Oh my god, man. He's gonna go. He's got to go speak to Thorkel because he needs their sleds to treat the wounded. Oh, that's gonna be crazy. And see, it'll be an interesting thing now, seeing the, I guess the potential clash between Canute and Thorkel. I don't know. Will there be? God, I don't know, man. This episode, I feel like, changed a lot of things, And hey, I've been saying for like 10 episodes that this was the Askeladd show. I think that may have just ended. Who knows? It's a thing of like, if Askeladd gets through this and he does, if he tries his plan. So, okay, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't think that Askeladd would be able to manipulate Canute anymore. Excuse me. But I think Canute would still work with him. Like, Askeladd is doing all of this for the sake of Wales, what he views as his home, as apart from Denmark. He understands that Denmark is going to take over England, and he's thinking, okay, great, if I can work a new king of Denmark and a new king of England in Canute, then I can protect my home of Wales, basically protect it from anything that the English had done for the past 5 centuries, So that's the thing, is that, that's what he's going for. But now I'm thinking Canute would just do that. Like, you don't even need to manipulate him for that. I think he would just do that because, I don't know, I don't see that, if he oppressed Wales, that would be meaningless to him, Now, he did say, you need to learn what battles have meaning, when to fight, And again, that could also go back to Thor's a bit, where, he says, we have no enemies, there's no reason for you to get this revenge, but he did fight Askeladd. Now, it's for the sake of others, Maybe it is that sort of discrimination, that it's like, well, if we cannot attain love, maybe you do go with that route. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. I'm really like scratching my head on this one. Like, I'm really working to figure out everything that was put forth in this episode, because by golly, it was a lot, But I would think that Canute would find, oppressing Wales meaningless, There's no point, what has Wales done to him? Even then, if you go off of what Thor says, like, when he, in the dream, even though it's a dream, within Thorfinn's mind, it's still very accurate. It's basically repeating what Thor said to him in episode 1, maybe episode 2. It's like, you don't have any enemies. Even though Askeladd killed his father, Thorfinn does not have enemies. It's such an interesting thing, and I think that's sort of where Canute's mindset is at. So I don't know. It's a very interesting, very, very interesting thing. What is the salvation that is attainable on Earth? Like, why are we put on this Earth to go through these trials? What is the point of it? Because when you think in the long run, it's like, well, the world, for whatever your view is, has existed for many, many years before I existed, and will exist for many, many years after I have existed. So what is the point of coming in, me being born at this point and going through these trials and tribulations? Is there a point? Now that's the view of it. Is there a point? And that can sort of lead you back to chaos. It's like, well, there is no point. There is no meaning of life. There's no religion. There's no nothing. There's no nothing like that. It's just, at the beginning, in the beginning, boom. 14 million years later, here you are. There's just a series of events. One led to another. Things just happened. Why did they happen? There is no why. They just happened. I mean, you can say a why of like, well, why did the Earth get formed? It's like, well, there was, there's the sun that was formed and all this, cosmic nebula space dust, and eventually it all formed into a rock. That's why. But that's not like there's no intention behind that, So is it chaos? Is it not chaos? Is there a point? Is there not a point? And that is now something that is on Canute's mind. What is the point of all of this? And it's still too early in the morning for me to be thinking about this. Jiminy Christmas. The show is bonkers, man. Oh my god. You know, this is the complete aside from everything we've been talking about. It's just because I want to gush about this show a little bit. Man, you know, like, I mean, to be honest, none of us watch the Oscars. I don't think you watch the Oscars. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't watch the Oscars. What I do see about the Oscars is what gets posted on Twitter, where, you know, it'll be like, well, Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about animation. And it's like, oh, now it's time for the best animated feature category. Now, how many of you just had your kids fill this out? And it's terrible. It's putting down animation so hard. And especially when, a Miyazaki movie won. And not just, it's like, oh, well, a Miyazaki movie was on the list, so you shouldn't. It's like, there were, like, Across the Spider-Verse was great, And that should not be put down as simple child stuff. And man, just thinking about, like, all the people who think, oh, animation, that's just for kids. Why don't you go watch Vinland Saga? Get back to me on that, Because, I mean, there's the obvious stuff of, like, oh, let's, well, why don't you watch Attack on Titan? This isn't even a statement about the quality of Attack on Titan that I normally talk about, but it's just like, you watch Attack on Titan, and, people are being eaten by giant naked man-eating dudes left, right, and center. That's obviously not for kids. So that's, the more sort of gory aspect, of a more mature title. This, and not that Attack on Titan doesn't have this. It has moments of this, obviously. But this is all the intellectual stuff. It's like, you cannot have this in the same category as something like, I don't know. I get like SpongeBob, I guess. SpongeBob. Even though, like, I watched SpongeBob back in the day, back in the early 2000s when I was a kid, and I enjoyed SpongeBob back then, And sure, there are standout episodes that you remember of SpongeBob. Nothing in SpongeBob, I think, unless I've just, I haven't watched the show fucking years, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing in SpongeBob that talks about the man, What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be alive, I don't think SpongeBob talks about that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Paw Patrol doesn't talk about that stuff, So it's just one of those things. I just wanted to mention that just because after this whole huge philosophical discussion we just had, it just like popped into my mind, like, man, look at what animation can do, I know, granted, you could have this exact same story. Like, the thing about this story is, we talk, everyone talks about, like, oh, let's do live action adaptations of anime, which are stupid generally, and only work out, as a miracle, like One Piece. Like, that, One Piece is a miracle. Everything else is either god-awful or pretty good, With some exceptions, like One Piece being really, really good, But it's like, this could have been live action, and it would be amazing. Everyone would be talking about, like, man, like, this would be like Game of Thrones, This would be like Game of Thrones, except instead of titties, it's philosophy, Like, that's the thing. Like, this is so good. And I bet so many people sleep on it because, A, it's animation, and B, probably because it's anime as well. Because even still, there's such a stigma against anime, I remember I posted on Twitter something dumb that happened in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. And it was a goofy moment. And I was like, man, this is just this crazy moment that happened in this Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. And someone replied and they were like, yeah, well, that seems pretty par for the course for anime. And I was just like, what anime are you watching where this is a regular occurrence? Like don't get me wrong, tropes and everything exist in anime, but like, you cannot boil down the entirety of anime as one thing, Like, just because, on a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, a character literally, this is actually something that happens in a Yu-Gi-Oh show. A girl punches a fax machine, an old fax machine, and it creates a new artificial digital form of life that introduces fusion summoning into the game. I swear to you, that is an actual plot point that happens in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. But you can't hear that and be like, oh yeah, I bet that happens in Vinland Saga too. No! That isn't... So anyway, rant over. Basically, this is just me being like, this show is amazing. And people should watch this, you know? People should, in the same way that, you know, in the same way that people should watch Mob Psycho 100, I feel like, you know? Weirdly enough, I think those are like companion shows almost, you know? And I don't need every show. I don't need all of animation to be like this, you know? I love something goofy. I'm watching Kaguya-sama Love is War. Yeah, hell, even Mob Psycho is pretty goofy a lot of times, you know? So, I mean, just the entirety of, like, Reigen Arataka, he's a goof. He gets deep, but he's also a goof, you know? I mean, even here, Thorkel, he gets deep, he's also a goof, you know? But it's just like, man, this show is so good, you know? And I feel like I don't hear about this show enough, you know? Maybe that's it, is I don't hear about this show enough. I've heard some things. I've heard, from what I hear, everyone loves it, and that's great. But, I don't know. Am I going anywhere with this? Probably not. Anywho, that is basically it. With all of that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of my Vinland Saga reactions, as well as another video you can go click on if you want. There's, oh god, also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later. Sorry about that.